2020, the year has started. January is almost over, and it's crazy to think about how winter's truly set in. The new year has started, the new decade has started, and if you're like me, a lot of the resolve or resolutions you put out into play have gone or faded away, and it's kind of hard. It's you make these decisions, you make them to start out the new year, or a new point, or the front nine or the back nine. You walk into the next set of holes, you walk into that next month, that next week, that next day, and the first set of emergencies knock you off your feet. They knock you away. You have to start all over again. We talk a lot about discipline, right? How discipline is something you learn, something you inherit, or something you gain or grow over time. I think on the other side of discipline is this idea of simplicity. The simpler you can make things, the simpler you can make life. And there's a lot of books that talk about simplicity. Edward de Bono's book about simplicity is a great example in my overhead. There are these ideas of if you need discipline, if you need willpower, if you need something to be put together to put you on your way, then you already require, have too much, right? It's kind of hard to think about starting something new or starting too much new, overwhelming yourself, and then failing. So my three words, right? This whole idea of meteor, clarity, and forge. I made them my pro words, my cardinal markers for 2020. 2020 is a very pivotal year. It's a milestone birthday, right? A milestone achievement. But then I look at the blocks, right? I look at the blocks of life, and there's only 40 more on average that are out there. And it's amazing to think that now we're in a world where a lot of stats I'm reading this week, by 2060, automation can outpace almost every job that's out there for people to have. The first children to be born to go over 150 years are out there right now. They're born. They're around. The technology is going to be there to catch up to them, to help them live beyond what we know to be old age. It's immense to think about. A lot of those big macros, right? But back to the micro. I made these my pro words because they're examples I'd seen over the last decade, or examples I'd seen in the last year, or examples I've seen in the move of the Beltway that really reinforced for me how I want things to be and become different. When I say things, right, things is an easy cop-out, but how do I want myself to be and become different? Even this idea of being able to do this, right? Be able to talk online, get a like, thanks for the like. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we weren't able to do this. 5 years ago, podcasting was on its second wave, and there was still, I think, 18 to 20% saturation of the market for podcasting, where now today is over 80%. Things change fast. And I read a book last week called Start Finishing, because you know me, I'm a great starter, horrible finisher, different story. And the idea in the book was finishing all those projects that you have, all that stuff that you have. We've all got more projects than books, than ideas, than visions, and action plans and strategies out there. We have enough that's out there. The hardest thing to do for a leader, for anybody, is to take what's out there and to leave what's out there alone and continue to execute. And this comes in this idea of meteor, right? The things we inherit, the ideas that we have, there aren't a lot of new ideas left. If we think about new technology, and my friend Joey's got a great 2x2 model about this. Is it new technology being applied to old problems, or it's new technology being applied to new problems? And what's the real difference between an old problem and a new problem? For a lot of it's communication and context. So back to my three words, they're a great new way to frame an old problem. That is, how do you stand up and face up to 2020? How do you make this, whatever this new year is, different? How do you keep making each new year subsequently different? Thanks for the like. Dan John has a great philosophy. The strength coach Dan John of the West Coast, his idea is lose 1 pound. How many times or how many years in a row can you lose 1 pound to accomplish the physiological change you want to make? However, how patient are you, or how patient am I, and I'm not, to make that lose 1 pound mantra consistent for a decade to be 10 pounds lighter at 2030 and at 2020, or 2020 and at 2010. So back to my three words, clarity, right? Clarity's huge. And clarity is the second word, not the first word, so I always get them in the wrong order. Meteoric. Meteoric means for me this idea of being grounded and present. Grounded and present. not being flighty, not being non-committal, but being grounded in what the present is and being present in what is happening around and who I'm with and where I'm with. And it's hard. In the military, we have always been grown, groomed, and raised to a clock. That clock is a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year clock. If it extends beyond that, you're fortunate, you're lucky. But that clock has always been over our head like a bad Warner Brothers cartoon. And it's hard to create anchors when you know at some point you've got to dredge anchor, weigh anchor, and move on somewhere else, be somewhere else, try a new role, be in a new position. Oftentimes you don't know that position entails where it came from. It's kind of hard, right? Meteor for me is this idea of consistency and simplicity beating and overcoming the need to be disciplined. And that's something I'm really trying to have a hard time working with this year. Drucker talks about an effective executive. He is the originator of the idea of doing a time log and making time to paper to find strengths and enjoyment and then framing a life around that. And that's kind of what Meteor is, which leads to clarity. Clarity, what I start the year with is kind of what I want to end the year with. And even that kind of sounds false and ingenuine. But clarity is the idea, the goal, the objectives, the targets, the outcomes I have to start 2020. I leave 2020 with them. I did a 4-miler run, their Fairfax 4-miler. So whatever happens this year, I'd like to that lose 1 pound mantra, get to the end of 2020 and see some sort of improvement, make that improvement as consistent as possible, because entropy and ultimately death do grow over time. And finally, Forge, right? When I think about Forge, I think of Prometheus Unbound. I think about the gift of fire. Some people say that, that the apple was the cardinal sin that had us fall from the Garden of Eden. I'm one of the people who says it's fire. It's the idea of the original ability that man had to transmute raw materials into finished materials. We talk about the ages, right? The Bronze Age, the Iron Age. We talk about these major technological changes of man. It's fire. It's the forge that was the ability to get man out of subsistence into a surplus and into a brave new world. And forging is kind of an idea that you hear in a very hard and rigid sense. But isn't that what we're all trying to do, right? Aren't we all trying to forge ourselves to be better under some capacity, under some role, whether it's a work role, a health role, which I like specifically, whether it's a spiritual role. If you think about the second and third careers that people have when they're really truly trying to give back, they're trying to establish and cement their legacy, whatever that legacy looks like for them. Forging is this idea of that mill, that grist, that raw product that goes into the heat, gets tempered, becomes something different. How do I rebuild and repair myself over the 40 years of decisions, the hundreds of thousands of decisions I've made, the hundreds of thousands of choices I think I had or didn't have? How do I reforge myself from that routine, those habits, those instincts, into being someone better, a better leader, a better man, a better person for what I want to do, second career, and ultimately third career? So that's what those 3 words mean to me. And in the meta, it's easy to forget that 23 days ago, I sat down at home in Georgia with my parents, and I took a lot of stock into the models they were for me, the models they had been for me, a lot of their experience for the last decade as well as experience a lot of the friends that are around me, from the service I wear, the actions I've taken, the career I've had, to really figure out what is that plant, what is that anchor, what is that nail that creates a new bridge, a new path towards what I want to be next. And usually it's like day 15 where you forget about this stuff. I guess for me it was day 21, which may have gotten a little better, but there's still a lot of ways to go.